Let me call to order the meeting of the City Council for the City of St. Helena for March 24, 2015. We're going to start with item 3. Council met at 5 o'clock in closed session. There were 2 items. One related to existing litigation and involved 1837 Pine Street, and the mayor was recused from that one due to proximity of his property to that property. And then there was another item considered in closed session that related to Spring Mountain Vineyards. And Ms. Kroll?
Oh, I was recused from that one also because of the proximity to my home.
And I'll turn it over to the City Council here to see whether there was any reportable action.
So the mayor is correct that the City Council did meet in closed session to discuss those 2 items designated on today's agenda as items 2A and 2B. No reportable action was taken.
All right. Mr. Pitts, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Black, roll call.
Mayor Galbraith?
Here.
Vice Mayor White?
Here.
Councilmember Kroll?
Here.
Doring?
Here.
Pitts?
Here.
The next item on our agenda is public forum, and members of the public are invited to address us for a time not exceeding 3 minutes with respect to matters that are not on our agenda.
Hi, Jeff Ellsworth, Sylvaner Avenue. I've become involved with a coalition of citizens groups around the county called Vision 2050. Groups from all over getting together, very serious about water concerns, traffic concerns, development concerns. Anybody who's interested in talking about it can get in touch with me. We are just trying to open up the conversation so that everybody feels that they have a voice in participating in the community. What we think is that the county and the cities have to really work together. Instead of thinking in terms of black and white, thinking in terms of how do we mesh whatever we need to do in terms of funding or traffic issues. So we make a big grand plan for how we want this place to look in 2050. Anyway, so it's called Vision 2050, and anybody who wants to know more can get in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ellsworth.
Good evening. I'm Kelly Pitts. I am president of the K-5 parent-teacher group for St. Helena Primary and Elementary School, and I'm here with Doug Abdallah from the St. Helena Public School Foundation. And we're here just to thank the community for its huge support. I'm always awed and humbled when this community comes together. And we have, as of just a few moments ago, raised over $200,000 for Give Big for the kids and the schools and our community. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's a huge accomplishment. I'm so proud. And I just want everyone to know it's still not too late. And you can go online at givebigsthelena.org and make your donation. So just thank you. We're so appreciative.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Pam Simpson with the St. Helena Chamber of Commerce. I attended a meeting on Friday at the Napa Chamber to learn more about the developing situation regarding the Pomo Native American tribe and their recent agreement with the Las Vegas developer to look for land in Napa, Solano, or Sonoma County. At the meeting were reps from the Sierra Club, Napa Vision 2050, the Napa Chambers, the Calistoga Chamber, St. Helena Chamber, Farm Bureau, grape growers, wine growers, vintners, Visit Napa Valley, county government officials. Congressman Thompson's office was there, as well as Supervisor Perdoza. We learned about the varying scenarios where land could be acquired to build businesses, not just casinos, in cities or on county land without abiding by our land use ordinances or without input from our local governments or residents. There exists a real and present danger that a sovereign nation could legally circumvent our local processes and have access to our resources, including our water. While residents, we may not always agree with the outcome, something we do all agree with is that the application process via the Planning Commission, the City Council, with input from residents in the community, must be followed with no exception. As a result of the meeting, we agreed to support a joint effort, PR and otherwise, which would let all entities know that we demand any business by Native American tribes who acquire land in Napa County to respect and abide by our local ordinances, our permitting process, and our preserved lands. We'll be updating the joint letter our organizations all signed in 2012 and recirculating it to bring awareness to this issue. The Vintners have pledged an immediate $100,000 towards this effort and are asking organizations like ours to help raise another $100,000, in which they will match with a third $100,000 for a total of $300,000 towards this effort. We'll be encouraging all of our city councils, as I am tonight, to reevaluate your resolution that you passed in 2012 regarding this issue. In a related item, last night's ruling in the federal case was a win for Napa County against casinos and ensures that local lands continue to be protected. And we would like to commend the Board of Supervisors and especially the Chair, Diane Dillon, and the county officials for their work on this effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Anybody else? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Bobby Monette. I'm speaking as a citizen. I just have a question of the Public Works Department. I know that sometime in March or April, we're able to water again, and I wasn't sure if we're going to be notified by mail with our water bills, or when that time will be, if it will be that when we get the extra allocation for irrigation, so for landscaping. So I'm just throwing that question out. Thanks.
Well, I think the answer is that we're in phase 1. We're not in phase 2 at the moment. So at the moment, there is no allocation moving forward. Thank you. Mr. Vondra?
Hi, Chuck Vondra, St. Helena, California. Hello, everybody. I've got several things I want to try to talk about. I'll try to go quick, and I know that none of you are under any obligation to respond or answer, but I will leave a few seconds in my allotment in case you are so inclined. I'm up here to kind of complain about a process that I've noticed in the last few months where these public meetings are offered, and they're done during the week. There was one, I believe, and I could be wrong, I scoured the website for notes and information on all this, but on the housing element. I believe it was done on a Wednesday. Well, I work. A lot of my friends and neighbors work on Wednesday. We were shut out of that process. I believe there was a meeting on the budget, a Wednesday, a Friday. I mean, people work during these times. We all have jobs. I sort of feel like the public's being shut out of this process, and the only folks that can go is a select few happy people that are retired, which one day I hope to be. But I'd like to be included in this. I'd like to have these meetings on Saturdays where I don't want to give up my Saturday, but I do care. I read somewhere, heard somewhere that we're going to hire 20 people for the city. I'm thinking, really? Where's the business case? We're broke, according to the Star. We're hiring all these people. I'd like to be part of that process. I didn't see any information on the website about the rationale, any of that. And maybe I'm out of the loop. I'm not looking in the right place. But I'm a concerned citizen, and I'm interested in this, and I want to participate. I understand there's a meeting coming up to discuss the general plan on a Wednesday. I can't make it. I'm working that day. I'm very interested in the general plan. I'm curious as to why, we've been at this for 5 years. We spent a laborious amount of time last year with the city council going line by line, hiring experts. Is there another planning public meeting? Are we going to open the process up again? If that's the case, fine, I want to be down there, but I can't be there on Wednesday the 15th, and neither can a lot of my friends and neighbors. So I'm concerned that a lot of rhetoric during the campaign is we want more transparency, we want more open, we want to not be a special interest group. Well, I don't see that happening. I see it's hard for people to stay involved when these meetings are done with little notice on days of the week when many of us cannot possibly attend. So I guess that's my comment. I did look at the general plan. I'll try to be quick. The housing element, excuse me. My only one concern there is be very wary of any language where the city overcommits itself to anything. I work with a lot of cities. I have clients, 30 to 40 cities in California and school districts. They tell me one of their biggest, I'm going quick, threats is lawsuits. There are organizations out there that literally prey on cities and school districts because they're easy targets. They sue them. So my comment there, I read the housing element. There seems to be a word or two or a phrase or two in there that may be unnecessarily opening the city up for future litigation and risk. 4 seconds. So you don't have to comment on my quest for open meetings that people can attend rather than a select few.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any further public comment? All right, I'll close public comment and turn to reports by staff. Ms. Phillips?
I don't have any this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Brown? Ms. Black?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Before you, I have a flyer regarding boards and commissions with, we've got some vacant positions that we're trying to reach out to the community and leaving flyers various places around the city. And I'm just encouraging mayor and council members, if you could please assist me and reach out yourself and just really encourage our citizens to get involved. And on the flyer, I've just kind of captured a little note of some of the mission statements of some of the committees. And in the back of the room, I left the flyers and also applications. So we're going to be closing it April 3rd, and then it's going to be going back to council for your deliberation and choosing the members. So.
Thank you very much. I might reinforce that just very briefly. There are quite a number of positions that remain to be filled. On the Sustainability Committee, 2 positions and 2 alternate positions. The Active Transportation Committee, 3 positions and 1 alternate position. Library Board of Trustees, 3 positions. Parks and Recreation, 1 position. Tree Committee, 4 positions and 2 alternate positions. Multicultural Committee, 2 positions. And Mosquito Abatement, and in a dry year that may be important, 1 position. So, to reinforce what the city clerk said, there are a lot of positions that are open, and I'm hoping that the members of the community listening to us this evening will think about volunteering for these important positions.
Are these vacancies or are these renewal of position terms, or maybe a combination of both?
There's actually positions that are expired terms. We've got people in expired terms. However, I have not been successful at recruiting for positions, so the members are having to stay in their expired terms until we have a successful recruitment to fill the positions. Now, there are some terms that are going to be up the end of June of this year, so we're doing some proactive work as well. So.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mitz?
I have no report, thank you.
All right. Mr. Carniglia? And Mr. Palmer? Is there any word with respect to Highway 29 and what may be coming down the road there?
The contract, to my knowledge, has not been finalized with the new contractor yet, so we don't have a firm construction start date.
Okay. Members of the council?
Nothing to
Mr.
report.
Pitts?
Thank you.
No, I have just one matter, which was that Congressman Thompson's office called me last week and enthusiastically advised that the EPA had funded close to $1 million for our dam removal project on Upper York Creek. That still leaves us, though, about $1 million short. Nevertheless, the city manager is optimistic here that once things fall into place, that the remaining $1 million will be forthcoming from a grant or other source. And so I want to share her optimism with respect to that. We've been working on getting rid of this dam, I think, since 1996 or 1997, and it's important to get it behind us at some point. All right. Next is presentations and public recognitions. And this evening we have 3 proclamations. So let me drink some water. First one is at the request of the library. And it's a proclamation that we be a bee-friendly city. Whereas bees are essential partners of gardeners, farmers, ranchers, and wildlands in producing food supplies for both humans and animals. And whereas bees are responsible for pollinating 70% of our crops, valued at more than $15 billion annually. And whereas gardening groups, homeowners, school children, nature lovers, and commercial food producers recognize that bees provide significant environmental benefits that are necessary for maintaining healthy biodiverse ecosystems. And whereas bee colonies and native bees around the globe are in crisis, and the national loss of honeybees in particular is twice that what is considered sustainable. And whereas the plight of bees is complex and we wish to inform ourselves and our community about issues affecting wild bees and the implication of domestic bee colony collapse on our economy and way of life. And whereas we seek to understand and with that understanding encourage all members of our community to take what steps they can to support bees in our backyards, our gardens, our vineyards, and our fields. And whereas the St. Helena Public Library has received a grant from the Book to Action program supported by the Institute of Museum and Library Services under the provision of the Library Services and Technology Act to create activities that encourage a bee-friendly community. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Galbraith of the City of St. Helena, California, do hereby proclaim this day of March 10 as the launch of the St. Helena Bee Aware Initiative. Henceforth, I urge all members of our community to recognize bees and their many contributions and to participate in the St. Helena Library's Bee Aware Initiative to learn more about what we can do together to create a bee-friendly community. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 24th day of March, that's a little more to the point, signed by me. So there you go. Do you have any further comments? Or does it speak for itself?
It speaks for itself, but I will say I noticed that when you come up with 3, you don't get the plaque, you just get a folder. It's okay, I understand budget cuts.
All right. The next one is a proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Month. Is there anyone here to receive this proclamation? I'm going to actually present this proclamation at an event in April, and so perhaps this evening I'll just read the last couple of paragraphs. Whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among state and local governmental agencies, school, faith, communities, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Alan Galbraith, Mayor of the City of St. Helena, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2015 Child Abuse Prevention Month in the City of St. Helena. I urge all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening our community. The third proclamation, a very important one, and is Mr. Van Gorder here from Pacific Gas and Electric, and it's a proclamation that for April declares April to be California Safe Digging Month. Whereas excavators, homeowners, and contractors can save time and money while making California's communities a safer place to live and work by dialing 811 in advance of all digging projects. And whereas calling 811 Underground Service Alert in advance of all digging projects provides effective damage prevention and protects California's citizens, communities, public services, environment, and underground facilities at no cost to the caller. And whereas calling the free 811 service provided by the Underground Service Alert of Northern California denotes 5 steps to a safe excavation: survey and mark, call before you dig, wait the required time, respect the marks, and dig with care. And whereas gas, electric, water, sewer, and storm drain utility lines are often buried only a few inches underground, making them easy to strike and cause unintentional damage and harm. And whereas there are more than 170,000 underground utility lines struck yearly in the United States, causing undesired consequences, such as service interruptions, outages, damaged infrastructures and properties, personal injury and death, by failing to call 811 before digging or safely marking utility lines. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Alan Galbraith, Mayor of the City of St. Helena, along with the St. Helena City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2015 as California Safe Digging Month and encourage its residents, professional contractors, and excavators to call 811 to be connected to a one-call center before digging, to respect the color-coded lines that demarcate underground utilities, and to dig with care around the marked lines.
Thank you very much.
Okay, do you have any further comments?
Maybe just a couple quick comments.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm going to plead guilty. Before working for PG&E, I was not aware of 811. Last year, we zero-escaped our yard. Thankfully, I was so informed about calling 811, and we marked it out quickly. They came and marked all the utilities very quickly, and we safely dug around them. I was planning to plant a tree where our gas line was. It's springtime, summer. People are digging post holes, digging trees, doing some planting. It really will save the city a lot of effort, police, fire response, and the people who are digging, plus their neighbors. I just tell people, dial 811 so you don't have to dial 911. And I really do appreciate your proclamation. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. And it sounds like more than just April needs to be Safe Digging Month. Okay, this brings us to our consent calendar, and again, I'm going to go through these items one by one, and any member of the public or any member of the council can pull an item off of consent. Let me stress, there's nothing sacrosanct about the fact that something is put on the consent calendar. Anybody should feel free to come in here and say, I want it pulled, and we'll discuss it. 11. Consideration and proposed approval resolution approving a professional services agreement with COWI North America, Inc. for plan, specifications, and estimate for Bell Canyon Reservoir sluice gate replacement in the amount of $35,900. Item 12. And again, as I go through this, please say if you want it pulled at the point where we get to it. Consideration and proposed approval authorizing a contract with Paragon Tactical to install a bullet trap at the St. Helena Police Department gun firing range in the amount of $87,733. Consideration 13. Consideration and proposed approval of resolution approving out-of-state travel for wastewater chief operator Michael Sample to attend the California Rural Water Association Conference in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, April 27-30, 2015, in an amount not to exceed $1,150. Number 14, consideration and approval of resolution authorizing for out-of-state travel for Mandy Kellogg and Dawn Marshall to attend the annual Springfoot Conference, May 5th through 7th, 2015, in the amount of $1,600. Number 15, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution for an economic vitality director, assistant city manager, and appropriation of funds for remainder of fiscal year 2014-15 in the amount of $35,000. Number 16, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving an employment contract for John Sorensen, chief.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Did you read 15?
I did. You want that pulled?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure. I was hoping I was clear that if someone wanted it pulled, that he or she should say so at the point where I did so. But nevertheless, at the end, I'll go back and ask again whether any other item needs to be pulled. Okay? Number 16, consideration and proposed approval of resolution approving an employment contract for John Sorensen, fire chief. And number 17, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution authorizing the city manager to make minor amendments to the previously approved development agreement as authorized by Section 9.3 of the subject development agreement, which is applicable to the Vineland Station site located on the west side of Main Street, immediately north and south of Vidovich Avenue, consisting of 3 parcels totaling approximately 8.5 acres. And if that one is not pulled, nevertheless, there are some minor word changes that need to be mentioned in the resolution approving the consent item. So whoever makes the motion on the consent item, on the consent calendar, needs to remember that. Now, item 15 is pulled. Again, does anybody else want any other item pulled other than item 15. All right, then the chair would entertain a motion to approve consent items 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, and 17 with the special notation with respect to 17 that there are some minor word changes as provided by the city clerk.
I need to add that I need to recuse myself from item 17 as well for potential financial conflict reasons.
All right.
So I move to approve those items in 17 with the amended resolution.
We should probably bifurcate it and not include 17 so that Greg can vote
Oh,
on
okay.
that, and then 17 by itself.
All right, let's,
Okay, that'd be fine.
let me do it again quickly. So the chair will entertain a motion with respect to 11, 12, 13, 14, and 16.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Doring?
Yes.
And Mayor Galbraith?
Yes.
And me.
Greg.
And I'm sorry, Councilmember Pitts?
Yes.
The other guy.
Okay. We got there. Okay.
And I move approval of 17 with the revisions stated.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
And technically, because of the recusal, it would be appropriate for Councilmember Pitts to step away from the dais during that vote.
Should I go all the way to the back or just over here?
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. All right. That takes us to item 15, and staff report, please.
So this item is for the creation of an economic vitality director, assistant city manager position. This came about when the city council met at the end of February for strategic planning session. There were 6 objectives that were identified as part of that strategic planning meeting. One was the establishment of an economic development assistant city manager position. And so when council identifies these types of operating priorities or policy priorities, it's my job as the city manager to identify and recommend the necessary resources to accomplish the priorities that are set by council. So after that meeting, I assessed this position and what I believe this position needs to do to successfully implement, quite frankly, all of the strategic objectives that were identified, because I believe that they're at the high caliber of an executive level position. And so what I identified sort of from a high level perspective was creating an economically, community-based and environmentally based program that will help establish a roadmap towards an overall vitality for the city of St. Helena. I think that we need to be more engaged regionally with planning and land use matters as well as regional issues, which is very difficult for me. So either I would be able to attend more of those meetings or the assistant, or we would be able to switch off. I, quite frankly, in my first 8 months have not been able to attend any regional meetings because of the workload. Identifying, leading, and developing affordable housing opportunities, because I believe that economic vitality and general community vitality includes workforce and affordable housing. And we don't have anyone, as we discussed during the strategic planning session, there is no one tasked in the organization to work on these kinds of things and more proactively work on them. Manage some larger projects, things that I have done in the past months that have really added to the workload, and things that are coming in the future that are larger and again at that executive level position. Including working with potential developers, working with business individuals. I did the refi on the Stone Bridge, which was a very complicated financial deal. Those would be the types of things that potentially this individual could take on. And it also establishes a succession plan. It's been a while since the city's been able to promote from within, and I understand we're a small community and a small city, but one of the healthy things that an organization does is it has succession plans, and we're working on that both internally with our department heads, but also for me. And so, as I always tease with my staff, I live by the hit by the bus theory, and I care very deeply for the organizations that I manage, and it's important that someone's there to take my place, whether it's it's 3 or 5 years, whether it's 10 years, whatever that period may be, or something happens to me. And so succession planning is about a healthy organization. And so this position would also provide that opportunity, as well as be able to serve in my place when I am not in the office. We currently rotate that among the department heads, but it would be nice to have an assistant city manager that could serve as an acting city manager. And again, it's really at the level, this is 4 jobs packed into one. I will be looking for someone who will function at the 120% that we all do. And so really being able to take a lot of these very high level, very important responsibilities and task them into one, very capable, incredibly high energy person who could deliver these things for us.
All right. Any initial questions of the city manager? Then let me open it up to public discussion. And I think the rules are 3 minutes apiece, are they, Ms. Black? Yeah. All right. Does anybody wish to comment publicly?
Jeff Ellsworth, Sylvaner. I just wanted to bring it up because we want to make sure as citizens that our general plan is really adhered to. Living here for the past 40 years, seeing the effort the citizens have made to protect the nature of the town. So I think Ms. Phillips is doing a great job, and I'm all for us all working together towards continuing to protect this place and build it properly, in balance, regionally. One of the things that we've, on the county level, that everybody's talking about is notification of projects. So if a project is happening and there's a variance on the project, a variance with the general plan, what's the notification for the public so that they know, okay, here's a project that's being planned, but it's outside the sphere of the general plan. Recently, in St. Helena, a couple of things have come forward, and the citizens have been given very limited time to go through the projects and find out what the variances are and how they may affect us as citizens. I think we're all aware of what those projects are. So my concern, or what I'm saying is I'm all for having the proper staff, all the right people in place to do the jobs. I just want to make sure the citizens are getting the notification and we don't have to dig for it, that planning staff is working with the citizens and the planning commission and the city council to keep the nature of the town the way that we've worked so hard for so many years to protect it, and that's why we have a general plan. And when we start varying from the general plan and saying, well, we're going to do a little bit this way, a little bit that way, and we'll push it this way, maybe at some point we lose the vision. So I just want to make sure that maybe as we're thinking about adding staff, we're also thinking about putting in mechanisms for the public to really see what these projects are before they come up. And that was another thing we talk about on the county level is if everybody knows ahead of time what's coming up, and then we can have less appeals and we can have less lawsuits. It's something nobody wants to spend their time doing. But if we're not given the information in a timely, ahead of time manner, we're stuck. So anyway, I'm very supportive of having the right people in the right place. I just want to make sure that we also have the mechanisms that the public's, it's almost proactive from the staff and the planning and the city side, proactive to letting the citizens know what is happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sandy Erickson at Scott Street. This is a really great thing, and I applaud everybody who's on board with this idea. I do think $35,000 isn't enough. I can't imagine a person, unless it's a part-time position, very part-time, I can't imagine a professional person who is really going to bring background, education, and some experience to this, because it's a complex job, is going to do it for $35,000. I would suggest something almost twice that, but I don't know what the budget allows.
It's just for 2 months.
It's just for 2 months?
Right.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
The budgeted position is $210,000.
Oh, okay. All right, great.
Fully loaded.
Okay, all right. So I was a little nervous we were not going to get, you get what you pay for, blah, blah. Okay, I wanted to be as tactful as possible, given the budget and all that, but thank goodness we're going to. Okay, so that was my second thing, is that this be a fully qualified professional person and not somebody with a good heart. And the next thing is that it be a person independent from the wine industry. Now, we know that the wine industry is a great industry and all of that, but this is about diversity and spreading the influences around so that, so we don't want anything that's remotely related, conflict of interest wise, and all that stuff that we have to sort out later. And then also, I think that it would be certainly good, obviously, if we can develop other industries and other forms of parts of the economy here. But also the city needs to look at its own income streams. There are lots of things that cities are doing now that are entrepreneurial in nature, and that's a whole other ball game. It requires sort of a business acumen for the city to go into that, but income streams on a municipal level are a current reality, and so it shouldn't be just about the city, it should be about the government itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kathy Coldarn. I had a few points and concerns over it. One of them was just highlighted by her, that she brought it up that it was $35,000. It's a question of transparency again. When you read the consent item, there's things in there that, unless you really dig deep, you don't get all the information. So of course you just see $35,000. I immediately thought, oh, part-time person. But then I looked into it some more. No, it's $200. It's a little bit over $200,000 a year, unless I'm wrong. I think it's 210.
210,000.
Yeah.
It's in the sentence right after the 35,000.
Right. Yeah, I did read it, and I was like, 200,000 a year. Wow, that's a lot of money. 5 years, that's $1 million. Then I asked myself, I've lived here 23 years. I've never seen an assistant manager position before. Next question I say to myself is the town growing that much? Is there really that much more work? Well, I do remember a lot of staff got let go in the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years. So now I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. If we've got all this extra work, maybe all those other slots haven't been filled so that that work is keeping up with the departments like it used to be before all these people got laid off or resigned or whatever. I'm just very concerned that assistant city manager is going to then become a president that we always have to have assistant city manager. I don't think that's a place that I'd like to see us go unless our town is really growing. And what about the possibility of the part about the business advisory and finding out how we can attract more businesses? I was at a few of those meetings. I don't have anything against that. But does that really require a full-time person? Why not consider getting a consultant to do a report on that separately? And then you've got some other departments that need some extra work. Maybe you could have a discussion, go through the different departments and see who needs to have some more help to relieve her a little bit. I'm just looking at this in terms of, if it was my money and it was my business, that's what I would be doing, and I would like to have the city council members do that too. It's a lot of money, and I don't think there's been enough public input on it. I do know that you had the meeting on Friday, as Chuck was saying. I also work. I couldn't go that day. And I'm curious as to whether you brought this up at the meeting, because that would be a wonderful opportunity to get some insight as to how some of the general citizens would feel about this. So if you did, I'd like to know. If not, it's another reason why you need to have a public meeting and have more input about it. My only other comment is about goodwill towards the citizens and building it up and building trust. I think, generally speaking, good leadership doesn't require, but good leadership expresses inspiring people to participate in the government. And if you don't do that, then what you have is just the opposite. You're not letting information out, you're not putting it out, and you don't develop goodwill. And for something like this, with a lot of money, I'm a taxpayer too, I think to inspire people and participate and bring comments is what you want and what we need. And I think putting it in the consent item at $35,000, it's not up front. $200,000 would have caught people's attention. And if you need that person, then there's no reason why you can't explain it and justify it. But I just think that there needs to be more input and more thought in it to make sure that the money is spent well, especially because everybody's heard that we don't have very much money. So this doesn't really
Can you
match
bring your
up.
comments to a conclusion? Thank you very much.
So that's all I'm concerned about.
All right, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Pam Simpson with the Chamber of Commerce. I'll just be really quick that, first of all, we support the City Council's strategic objective to make this economic development and the staffing a priority. And we support empowering the current city manager to make the right decision about staffing, and we fully believe that she can do that and make the right decision about who she's going to hire. I think she's done a great job so far, and so we support that. And we encourage this person just to have a background, if possible, in the private sector, but a very strong economic development background. And we look forward to working in collaboration to develop this strategic plan for economic development. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, Ms. Manette.
I have a brief comment. I'm Bobby Monette. As a citizen, I fully support what Pam just said and this position and so forth. At this point, it looks like it's been well thought out. But I would hope that on that particular issue of the new person working with the chamber to develop a plan for Main Street, that there be a specified participation of the public with that too. So that's not a plan between the chamber and the staff that comes to the public after it's been made, but that the public be asked to participate in the making of it. And I would like to see that structured into that particular part of this person's job. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Any further public comment? Then I'll close public comment and invite council discussion.
I'd like to, well, first off, I like I know we spent a lot of time thinking about the right title here, but economic vitality. I think some people get scared of the word development, and so just want to clarify that. And I see a lot of projects in this community that have started, but don't ever get halfway done or complete. And there is funding outside of our general fund that's been assigned to take on some of these projects. For instance, striping or bike lanes. There's a little stretch of bike path getting to the school over here that it just keeps stagnating and hasn't happened. I think working with the chamber and Downtown Renaissance, and so I think if we want to make progress over the next decade on important things that are going to benefit and improve our community, I think this is a perfect position to create. I think it also creates, as Jennifer said, a succession plan where when we've lost city managers, we end up in limbo for a year, maybe two. And so it'll help us avoid that in the future. So I'm fully supportive of this. I would like to know the breakdown between salary and benefits, how we got to this number. Is it competitive? Is it overly competitive? Is it the right number? Is it what we need to pay for this type of talent? I think it'd be good to understand how that breaks down.
So I looked at my existing exec staff, and it actually, I priced it out or costed it out a little bit less than one of my highest paid exec staff. So it actually would not be the second highest paid position in the organization because it is a new position, and that's normally not the case. And some candidates may have heartburn with that, but I'm okay with that. And so I priced it around the 140 to 150 in salary, and the rest is benefits. And that's a normal percentage for healthcare, all the dental and the PERS. And what was the other part of the question?
No, is that overly competitive, underly competitive? Not necessarily compared to our exec staff that exists, but other communities that have similar positions.
It's lower than Healdsburg, and that would be a comparison. Sonoma County has a lower cost of living, but Healdsburg actually goes to 170 is their assistant city manager that they just recently hired. So to have a candidate, who's either living in this area, so we would have a smaller pool if we're looking for someone who's already here, and to attract individuals, this has a very high cost of living in our area. Yountville doesn't have an assistant, Calistoga doesn't have an assistant, and I didn't look at the assistant in Napa. I based it off of what I think I can attract a very high caliber person, and sort of where it fits within our organization.
Thank you. Just to follow up through the mayor, can you talk a little bit more about the revenue side of it? How do we address the budget issue in the upcoming budget? I notice this is coming before the budget. Just want to have your thoughts about where you think this money will come from, and is it sustainable over time?
Well, I think that when the point of having priorities is that the council's giving me direction of things that are a priority for this community, and it's my responsibility to implement those priorities, and it may come at a cost of something else. Otherwise, having strategic priorities is pointless if we're just going to continue to do everything we've always done and put money here and there and sort of try to accomplish everything. Then you get to that really nothing ever gets done, but we're starting a whole lot of things. And so the reason for bringing this before the budget process is this is your direction. I did not ask for this position. This came out of the strategic planning. We spent 7 hours together. We talked about, and I'm sorry that there's some misunderstanding in the community, we talked about the fact that to become a functional organization, we would need 20 additional positions at the cost of $2.2 million. No one asked, none of my exec staff asked for positions during that discussion, and there will be no additional positions other than this one in the 15-16 budget. Even though we're desperate and we're struggling in some areas, I do not intend to add any positions in 15-16. And so, as I mentioned in the staff report, this will hopefully be covered with additional, revenues are up, but it may require some cost cutting in some other areas. Otherwise, we can't, it's not a priority then. And so what I'm asking is that council's given me the direction of these 6 objectives, and I'm asking you to commit to that priority and give me the resources to be able to implement your priorities. Additional revenue is also supposed to come from, we're evaluating our fees, and so we want to take a look at the fees that we charge. But economic development is also about revenue enhancement. So we hope by spending money that we make money over time. And so not the first year, maybe not the second year, but part of it is, again, I think very well said by Mr. Ellsworth, is if we can do things better, we can avoid some of the costs of the additional litigation or the additional appeals. And so that's kind of the whole idea about this is to have a community base. This is not the plan, as I stated in the staff report. It's to create a roadmap that is economically community-based and environmentally based for this community. So absolutely, it's supposed to include the community. It's not just a plan that's designed between the chamber and the city, and that takes a tremendous amount of time. So we're looking at some upfront investments with hopefully some payback coming in later years. But I can't guarantee that the revenue is absolutely there, because we do have some cost increases coming. We have the addition of the $528,000 payment for the flood control project that we need to now pay out of the general fund. But I'm committing to you that I will bring a balanced budget that will include this new position.
Just another follow-up. One of my concerns, and maybe we'll get into this a little later, is first of all, I'm fully supportive of the idea, because my initial thought was, this is too much money, but I've come to believe that we need staff, and we're really covering several different positions in one position, and so I trust that our city manager will utilize that position effectively for the community. So I've overcome that hurdle. One of the things I'm concerned about is that we may give short shrift to the notion of the affordable housing part of this position. And I just wanted you to speak to that issue a little bit more, because some could argue that maybe economic development and affordable housing may not be compatible. I don't know if that's true or not, but I want to make sure that if we're committed to having this position and paying for it, that affordable housing becomes a component of that. Frankly, I would like to add that language, just a brief couple words, into the resolution itself, so that we all are committed to that part of it, because I think that's how you've addressed it. So can you speak to that? Do you think they are compatible, and do you think that that's going to be a very unique, special person?
As have all my exec staff, and I believe that we've been able to find very unique individuals, and I would seek the same high caliber of person for this position. I believe that affordable housing and workforce housing and just a good housing stock is part of a vitally sustainable community, and that's why I didn't use the word economic development, because I didn't want to give the perception that it was only focused on business and money, that it's really about having this vitality in the community, and that means everyone, that everyone's included, and that we're able to create. In fact, there was just an article that came out for the ICMA talking about this vital downtown and how you need to really reach out to these different constituencies and create that vitality so that your community stays alive and functioning and prosperous. And so I believe, and that's why I think it's a good fit. I gave this a lot of thought, and I think it's a good fit to have that, is it 100% affordable housing? No, absolutely not. But the ability to proactively approach developers, the ability to proactively work on projects, when a developer calls, to be able to meet with that individual and proactively look for possible affordable housing developments, I think will be a critical component of this person's job.
And like Greg, I agree with the notion of a succession plan. I know that that's not common in the Napa Valley with our smaller cities, but we can be the first. And I had a chuckle when you said I live by the hit the bus plan. I must tell you, as a lawyer, I do too. No, in all seriousness, we have to have people ready to come up into these positions because, and it's better to have somebody within. When I was in Calistoga, we hired a city manager from a planning position, ended up staying there for about 13 years, and in my view, he did an excellent job. He was someone that we knew, we felt comfortable with, so I'm very encouraged that we can have somebody in that position, when you're 80 and retired. So thank you.
Mr. White?
I just want to know how you're going to clone yourself to fill that position.
I'll try.
No, I'm fully supportive of it. I think I felt that it was fully vetted at our goal-setting meeting, and I think that's why it ended up on the consent calendar, because we had hours of discussions over this position, and that was 6 hours of meeting with probably 60 or 70 or 100 citizens that could come to the meeting. So I think I was part of the suggestion to put it on the consent calendar. So I'll take that brunt, and so I'm fully supportive of it.
He was acting as a good vice mayor at the time. My comments are very brief. I think this will help us immensely in being a little more proactive and actually being able more so to bring the general community into these issues than we are currently able to do. Therefore, I support this motion.
I'm also 100% in favor of this position. That's all right. That's all right.
So at this point, the chair would invite a motion. The chair would have no objection if after economic development position in B it said including affordable housing opportunities, just to make that clear.
Sure.
So the chair would invite a motion approving the resolution with the addition of the words including affordable housing opportunities in point B in the second sentence after development position.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Black?
Councilmember Doreen?
Yes.
Kroll?
Yes.
Pitts?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. That takes us to the next item on our agenda, item 18, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving the 2015 strategic objectives. Ms. Phillips?
Yes. very brief staff report. It's an overview of what we discussed on February 27th at our special public meeting with the City Council, where we worked to develop an annual sort of strategic plan, strategic objectives. We had a very, I think, very thorough discussion. We did have members of the public, and I really appreciated that they took the time. And I'm so pleased that when we took a lunch break, I always worry when you take a lunch break, then people get distracted, and all of a sudden they get a phone call and they don't come back. And I believe almost every member of the public took a quick lunch break, went off as we did, and returned, and we had the room full again when we started. So I'm very appreciative of that, and I think we had some excellent dialogue. It was facilitated by Dr. Bill Mathis. We put a lot of preparatory work into it, and the council had the opportunity to talk about what they think, what the five of you think are the greatest challenges that are facing the city of St. Helena. Staff had the opportunity to share with you the pride in their work and what they do, but also some of the challenges that they have with regards to the magnitude of our workload and the fact that we have cut positions and we continue to be at a lower staffing level than we've been, and the workload is the same and if not more, and much of it has to do with regulatory requirements, unfunded mandates from the state, just fundamental laws that we have to implement, safety laws, and all these things that we have to do. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter whether we're a large organization of 200,000 or 100,000 or a small organization serving a city of 6,000. All those laws are applicable. And so all the regulatory laws, all the things we have to do. So in a larger city, I have an HR manager who manages, all of the HR matters, all the risk management and all the IT. So all the things that she's responsible for, all the laws that we have to be ensure of, safety and OSHA and all the HR laws that are out there, we just only have 68 full-time employees to watch out for, but all the understanding of PERS and retirement and healthcare and costs and risk, all that learning and all that implementation is the same, regardless of the size of the organization. And so it's no less work because we're smaller. Yes, we have less people and we have less citizens to serve, but the volume of work and what we need to be able to do is not that unsimilar to larger organizations. And so the staff had the opportunity to talk to you, and I mentioned earlier that we identified a need for about 20 positions at the cost of $2.2 million for the departments to feel like they could be functional, that we could actually take a breath. Many of us could go back to a 40-hour week and really be able to deliver the services and make sure that we're in compliance with all laws and regulations. And obviously that's not realistic, and we understand that. And staff is stepping up tremendously and I think doing a fantastic job. We just wanted you to understand some of the challenges because we feel bad when we can't deliver. We feel bad when we have to say, no, we can't do those things. And so we really appreciated the attention of the council and the community when we did that. And so from that discussion, the council started to talk about what some priorities need to be for the organization. And there's so many important things happening, and there's so many wonderful things we can do. And this is a very challenging exercise for an elected board like yours because you want to do so much and you want to accomplish so much. And so I'm very grateful that you were able to provide us, and me in particular, with some priorities. And so I can have the proper staffing, I can focus the resources, and we can get things accomplished and move forward. And so from that, you identified 6 strategic objectives that I take as my directive to work on at the end through this fiscal year and into the next fiscal year. And the first one would be a long-term revenue option, and you identified a real property transfer tax. And I want to be very clear that we're government, and so this is the planning to plan to plan process. So this is just you would like us to begin the exploration process of becoming a charter city. There will be many public processes. There will be many discussions about this. This is just my direction to proceed on this item. The next was to look at fees. Again, an opportunity for the newly created assistant city manager to assist in reviewing all of our fees. Fees are an interesting policy topic for councils, because part of the decision is how much full cost recovery are you interested in seeking? So some cities look at it and say, we want full cost recovery because if a private developer or a homeowner is going to come in, they should pay for all the costs of their project and it should not be subsidized by taxpayer dollars. And other councils feel that there's a balance in there. And so we want to reassess our fees and we want to come to you for direction on what full cost recovery looks like from a policy standpoint. So there's a tremendous amount of work behind that, but that's another revenue, potential revenue enhancement, and we want to make sure we're charging all the fees that we can and properly. The next is a financial assessment of our water and wastewater rates. And so the last study was done in 2011. We believe that we have some additional infrastructure improvements that need to be done. And, just like in garbage, the reality is the less you use, the more it costs. And that's the reality. And as we as a society move towards zero waste, which is not really zero waste, it's about 10%, we hope to achieve a 10% of our garbage going into landfills at some point. That's something that as a state and as a society we hope to move towards. That 10% of garbage is going to cost you more than it's ever cost you because recycling is fundamentally free. There's no charge, and water is the same way. Unfortunately, the less that's used, the more the water is going to cost because the cost of the system remains the same. The water use, you use less water, it's going to cost more. So we need to assess. With the drought, we need to assess our operations and our infrastructure and our capital projects. So we'll be doing that. You also asked us to look at our infrastructure needs. I had presented a long-range financial forecast, and one of the realities is we don't have any infrastructure plans. We don't have any kind of building replacement fund or plan. We don't have a park replacement fund or a plan. Steve is just working with MTC and has a much better handle on the streets. That's probably the best plan we know of, the cost and which streets. So we're where we need to be with the streets. We don't have an IT replacement plan. We don't have an IT replacement fund. And so those are the types of things you asked us to look into so we would have a better handle on the responsibilities of our infrastructure. The long-range financial forecast was well received by the council and appreciated, and you asked me to use that as a tool when a development comes in or the budget is done, and that we use that as a regular tool to look at our financial health. And the last one is the one you just approved, which was the economic manager, assistant city manager. And so what I'm asking tonight is I promised on the 27th, because the public process is so important to us and to you, that we would rediscuss these. And so you made no decisions on the 27th. We took this information, we made notes from the meeting, which I think are 7 or 8 pages long for those who couldn't attend, and we ask you to confirm that these are your priorities for the coming 18 months. Okay. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, let me see whether there's any public comment first. Mr. Sanchez.
I'm Daniel Sanchez. I'm with North Bay Association of Realtors. I had a handful of comments. One, we think that the city of St. Helena, while of course this process is just starting, I'm mostly focusing on the objective number 1, real property transfer tax. While we recognize that this process has just started, it seems, having followed this for about a month now, that the city council is not exploring the full range of financial and policy options available and mostly focusing on the real property transfer tax. Having made it the number 1 priority. And of course, we are, 2 years out. We're very early in this process, but it's a little bit concerning that it seems as if the real property transfer tax has become sort of, being that it's the number 1 objective, that before exploring the full range of policy options that were mentioned in the financial forecast document, whether it be assessment districts, annexing neighborhoods, sales tax, that this one has been elevated to the number 1 priority. So we would hope that the city council, before doing that, would perhaps take a step back. We recognize that this is just it is just a resolution. It is very early in the process, but it surprised us a little bit that it seemed as if the council is moving full steam ahead with this without having yet. We have not been reached out to yet. We've been the ones that are proactive on this. And so we wanted to put that out there and for the council to recognize this is obviously would be a big issue. going after the real property transfer tax. This early, we're thinking perhaps this is spreading the tax burden very narrowly on one group, in particular because property owners already, I think it's 3.1 million out of the 10 million general fund is property taxes. This would be an even greater proportion of it. I believe that having read the financial forecast, it's property taxes, then sales taxes, then TOT. But I know that property tax is the number one at 3.1 million of the 10, and so it would increase the proportion of the general fund that is through paid by homeowners. So we hope that continue to be part of this process throughout. We recognize that it's very early, but we wanted to express that it was a little bit surprising that it seemed as if the council was moving full steam ahead on this very early in the process. So we appreciate you're taking the time to listen, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more.
Thanks very much, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Yes, Sandy Erickson, Scott Street. I also want to talk about the transfer tax, and my concerns have to do with how the unintended consequences that may affect middle and lower income people. Clearly, if you're coming up here and shopping for second homes or, so we say fancier properties and so on, but there are a lot of people here in town who are Prop 13 people. They bought their property a long time ago, and they're just not wealthy people. And that tax takes out a greater percentage of their income, which they are depending on maybe to fund health issues or to, fund their old age and so on in another location even. So I don't know how it could be tweaked so that people that would be more greatly damaged and of middle and lower income categories would get some break, some grandfather thing or some, cutoff point or some mitigation of that, because clearly in a high income area you want to take advantage of all the property changing hands, but I don't think we want to start a massive selling off of property before it goes into effect so that ordinary folks can beat the tax, and I can see that happening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further comment? All right, let me close public comment and invite council discussion. Let me start with you. Yes.
So I guess maybe I didn't make myself clear or nobody agreed with me, one of the two options, because I was just, I find number one, our long-term revenue options, I think it's dangerous to just have the one option listed here. I think that it does depend on voter approval, and there's a lot of people in this town who are not necessarily behind this. And maybe I wasn't clear, but I firmly believe that our best source of revenue is TOT revenue. So I guess I thought that on the long-term revenue option strategy, it would be facilitating the fruition or completion of entitled hotels, because that will be a guaranteed source of revenue, and also exploring the option of developing one or two additional hotels for our town. So those are priorities for me. Maybe nobody else agrees with me, and that's why it didn't come up here. But that was, to me, that is just as important as exploring the property transfer tax. The other thing I didn't see on here, which is important to me, and maybe it would go under long-range financial forecast because it is a longer-range thing, is I think it's very critical to explore annexation options for Meadowood and other properties, commercial properties south of town. So I find that to be important. So, like I said, maybe no one agreed with me, but I did articulate that at the time, but maybe I wasn't clear.
Mr. Pitts?
I just wanted to add, and I generally agree with these six objectives on number one as it relates to the property transfer tax, and don't know how much we want to get into the detail of it right now, but I do think it's important that if that were implemented, my feeling is that there should be strategic and identified uses for that versus it being an open-ended tax that's going to go into the general fund. That's just my personal belief. I think we have a much better chance of getting it passed if it's focused on and targeted, whatever that may be. I know in other communities where it has been passed, they've specifically allocated those funds towards certain targeted objectives.
Does if it's targeted to a certain thing and not the general fund, then you would have to have a 3/4
Yes.
vote.
It's a higher vote.
Much higher vote.
threshold.
Which
Yes,
I
it's
think
much higher.
that would sink it right there.
Yep.
But I agree with Sharon that I felt it was pretty clear that we needed to explore more of the TOT revenue side, along with aggressively, moving forward on the property transfer tax. So I would like to see something to that language. I mean, I see the economic vitality director as the person that's going to explore, potential projects coming into the city and such, that I don't know whether it needs to be expressly
Well, I just felt like it was.
expressly put, or whether that should, be expressly part of the economic vitality manager's position. I mean, either way, I think we need to look at all possible revenue sources, and I think those are the two that should rise to the top that we should be looking at. But everything else in this report, I totally agree with. That I think it was a very well summarized and I agree with all 6 of these strategic.
Mr. Doring?
I understand the concern that Councilmember Kroll has articulated, but I never thought that this was intended to exclude all other options. I think it was intended to give clear direction to our staff that these are the most essential priorities. Of course, we're going to be looking at other revenue opportunities and hotels. Obviously, we all discussed. I think everybody here agreed with that. I just think this is more directional. The language is not as articulate as it could be, but I don't think it's meant to exclude all the other work that's going to be going on in addition to these priorities. At least I didn't understand it that way. So I think it's, if we want to make that clear, I'm okay with that there are other opportunities, because you're talking about hotel development. I was thinking about, well, what about the thing I talked about, so, probably 6 or 7 times during that meeting on that Friday about cost sharing opportunities with other public entities. I also think that is critically important, because that is helps us indirectly to reduce our costs, potentially also to gain revenue. So there are a number of other revenue opportunities, and I don't think this is meant to exclude it.
No, I think you're right, and I agree with you on the cost sharing. The reason that I view the TOT situation as essential, so that's why I think it should be there. But I also think it would be great to put the cost sharing thing in here also, just because 5 years from now, nobody might remember what you talked about at the meeting.
I'm sure they won't.
I think it's important, because that is a potentially big source of revenue, and so I think that that should be spelled out as well. And I see what you mean, that it was more of a bigger picture, but I guess I view that the need for TOT revenue from the properties that have already been entitled and haven't been built, and for possibly other development sites, is critical, and its potential for revenue potentially before a property transfer tax.
I just want to avoid confusing. Not that our staff's going to be confused, but giving more direction so we're more certain on what we think is a higher priority without eliminating the other.
Okay, I guess I think it's a higher
Greg,
priority.
you might want to help.
Well, what I wanted to add to that is that I think there are a lot of options we can be exploring, and you can't look at all of them at once. But we are going to hire an economic vitality coordinator and hopefully expert. Maybe there's things we're missing. Mm-hmm. Let's not be so focused singularly, because we may not get the votes for this. It may not pass. So then we'll spend a year and say, well, okay, back to, square one. What are we doing? So I honestly think we should be not just looking at what you mentioned, but what else, what are we missing? What are other, Ms. Erickson noted that there are new revenue streams that cities are coming up with. So are there other models that are out there that could work here? So I'd say want to be focused, obviously, but let's let the expert figure out what we should be focusing on based on a broad array of potential revenue generating sources.
Let me just make a couple of comments here. The issue here is objectives for the fiscal year 2015-2016. It's not going beyond that. It's trying to focus staff and its attention on what we identified as strategic priorities in the fiscal year that begins July 1st, 2015, and only for a year. Now, with respect to TOT, I think it's very important that we all realize that clearly TOT is important, but from what we saw from the long-range financial forecast, TOT, even if we are able to expand it significantly, is not going to get us to the point where we can deal with our infrastructure issues and especially our roads. That's the problem that we face, and that's why, to my way of thinking, it was extremely important that we all came together and identified the property transfer tax as potentially a significant source of additional revenue. And in doing so, we're following what other cities have done. Berkeley, Oakland, Alameda, Emeryville. This is not something that hasn't been done by responsible cities elsewhere as they grapple with the fact that they are way revenue shy and not able to address their infrastructure needs, which is where we are. And so I would urge strongly that we keep that as our number one long-range, as our number one goal for fiscal year 2015-2016. So that we begin the planning process for it at the staff level, as the city manager said. And I have absolutely, again, no objection if we want to say over on Project Economic Manager that focus on economic developments and special projects, including projects that will bring in TOT revenue. So it's among the 6 priorities that we have there. But I would urge the council not to wordsmith this. It's just objectives for the next fiscal year, and to approve it with that perhaps suggested change.
Well, I agree. I mean, I agree with you that it is on some level a short-term document because it is for the next fiscal year. Right. But because the property transfer tax is going to eventually require a vote of the people, I think it's responsible of us to simultaneously be focused on another source of revenue, which would be how can we facilitate already entitled hotels to be built, because that is something, I don't know if there's something we could do to change development agreements, anything like that we could do that would facilitate that. I think is just as critical as exploring the option of adoption of a property transfer tax in this next year.
Yes, and that's why I suggested the change in number 6. And I don't read these as, I read these as sort of 6 priorities, but the whole point of it is that the staff is going to be focused on all 6. It's not going to say, hey, we're going to focus on number 1 at the exclusion of number 6. These are 6 priorities that we've identified, and I don't think it matters very much as to how they are listed in this document.
I think that's fine if we include, identifying other revenue sources that are overlooked or enhancing in number 6. And look, we're going to quickly figure out if number 1 is going to work or not. I do think that while this is short term, we need to be thinking long term within our short term. Mm-hmm. And we haven't done that historically, and that's why we are where we are. So, but I'm totally fine with, let's make number 1 the primary focus. If we can get it done, then we have some breathing room to look at more, but let's also have number 6 include exploring other options.
Okay. Well, okay. So I think we've agreed here that we're going to modify 6 to hire a manager focused on economic development and special projects, including other revenue enhancing projects such as...
Including but not limited to projects that would enhance our TOT revenues.
Including, TOT.
And cost-sharing opportunities?
Cost-sharing opportunities.
Okay, cost-sharing.
And annexation options.
Thank you.
And.
Whatever. So do you want to come back with another resolution next time, or can you work with this one? Okay. Very
So
good.
moved.
All right.
If we could have a clear motion for the clerk, I would appreciate that.
Oh, come on, Cindy.
All right, go ahead, Peter.
Okay, so
Number,
move to adopt the resolution with changes in number 6 of the resolution to include, let's use your language.
okay, so it would be identify ongoing revenue to hire a manager focused on economic development and special revenue projects, including revenue enhancements such as TOT and
Cost
sharing.
What about the annexation options?
Don't accept it. I don't accept it, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Motion.
I'm just throwing
Let's-
that out. I mean, I might be outvoted on that.
Well, let's,
I tell you what, why don't you make a motion to amend to include annexation options, and let's see whether it carries
yeah,
a vote.
okay.
So
So
is
we'll
there a-
add the annexation
Are
options.
you finished with your?
Yes, and so,
Okay.
so just
So-
make a motion.
Okay,
Is
and
that
I would move to include in that stream of options, explore annexation
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right,
Actually, the appropriate procedure there would be for the maker of the motion to accept the proposed amendment dealing with the
Okay, I
annexation.
accept the proposed amendment.
Okay, and then to entertain a second to that.
all right, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Cindy? Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White,
Yes.
Councilmember Pitts,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Doring.
No.
Do I get a vote?
Mayor Galbraith.
No. All right, so that amendment passes, and then we have the rest of the motion as previously stated. So, Ms. Black, roll call, please.
Well, I think we were just
Which is
What was
approving.
included?
That was on the approval, I
It's
mean,
approved as amended, right?
Oh, it was approved as amended.
Yes.
Okay, I thought we were approving the amendment and then going back to the original motion. It's all approved at this point.
yes.
All right, well, certainly I would like the record to reflect that I'm for the motion, but for the,
For
The
amendment.
annexation.
but for the annexation
Okay.
issue. In other words, I'm not generally voting against the motion. That's the
Okay.
problem that I had. All right, I think that concludes our meeting, and thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, members of the public, for your participation. Always gets confused.